keep your eyes on the overhead camera inside a late-night diner off Abercorn Street in Savannah, Georgia. A horrible crime is about to happen right before our eyes, which shake the whole city. It's 10:57 p.m. on a humid Saturday. In the corner booth, a man sits alone. He's dressed stylish and upscale. He hasn't ordered much, just coffee, black, and a slice of pie he hasn't touched. The beautiful, thick and good-looking waitress approaches with a polite smile, refilling his cup. She says something to him, and he nods, never looking her directly in the eye. That waitress is Tanya Rhodes, 32 years old, mother of 2, and a beloved server who'd worked at this diner for nearly 6 years. As the night winds down, she glances toward her coworker, mouthing something that the camera's audio doesn't pick up. Later, the coworker would tell police what she said. "That guy gives me the creeps." At 11:32 p.m., Tanya hands him the bill. He pays in cash. He stands, nods politely, and leaves. She watches him go. Then, after a moment, she shakes her head and continues wiping down the counter. Outside, another camera captures him walking across the lot. He stops, lights a cigarette, and leans against a lamppost. His car, an older model black Chevy Impala, is parked in the far corner of the lot, engine idling. At 11:58, Tanya clocks out, grabs her purse, and waves to her coworkers. She walks toward her red Nissan parked near the rear exit. The parking lot camera catches her unlocking the door, getting in, and starting the engine. But it also catches the man's car following her as she pulls onto the road. That would be the last time anyone saw her alive. This is the story of a waitress who served a man she thought was just another customer, and how that ordinary encounter turned into her final night on Earth. Tanya Rhodes was known around town as the Diner's Sunshine. She was 32, a single mother of 2 boys, ages 8 and 10. Her life wasn't easy, but she made it look effortless. Friends said she worked double shifts without complaint, always saving for her kids' future. Her co-workers described her as the kind of person who remembered regulars' birthdays, who snuck extra fries for kids, and who left notes on the fridge for her night shift friends. "You're almost done." But behind that bright exterior, she'd been carrying a lot. Her longtime boyfriend, Marcus Lee, had died in a motorcycle crash 8 months earlier. The loss nearly broke her. She had spent months working through grief, trying to stay strong for her children. She told friends she was finally beginning to move forward, just focusing on peace, money, and my boys. That Saturday night shift was supposed to be routine. Nothing unusual, a few regulars, a couple of late-night travelers, and the man in the corner booth. When she didn't show up the next morning to take her kids to her mom's house, her mother, Vanessa, called her phone. No answer. By noon, she tried again. Straight to voicemail. By 2 p.m., Vanessa drove to Tanya's apartment. Her car wasn't there. Her uniform from the night before was missing, and her bed hadn't been slept in. The mother's first call was to the diner. One of Tanya's co-workers, Denise Harper, answered. She confirmed Tanya had closed up around midnight. She'd clocked out right after they cleaned the counter. Denise also mentioned the man in the denim jacket. He was just weird, she told police later. Didn't talk much, just kept staring. She joked that he was probably an ex-con. That joke would turn out to be true. By Sunday morning, Savannah PD had opened a missing persons case. Detectives began with her last known location, the diner's CCTV. When they reviewed the footage, the timeline was clear. Tanya's final moments were all there. Her smile, her words, the cash transaction, the man's subtle glance toward her car keys. At 11:33 p.m., the man leaves. The footage outside shows him lingering near the dumpster, smoking. He checks his phone twice, then moves to the far corner of the parking lot where his Impala waits. When Tanya walks out, he watches. The camera angle catches only the faint movement of headlights as her car leaves, followed by his seconds later. From there, she vanished. Investigators traced her route through city traffic cameras. Her car was spotted at 12:12 a.m., traveling east along Victory Drive. 3 minutes later, another camera near a gas station caught both her vehicle and a black Impala turning down the same side street. That was the last footage of her car moving. By dawn, both cars were gone from the area. Detectives quickly identified the Impala's plate number, BMF 7823, registered to Calvin Brooks, 48 years old, recently paroled after serving 16 years for aggravated assault and kidnapping. He'd been released 6 weeks earlier. His parole officer confirmed that Calvin had been living in a halfway house just 2 miles from the diner. He had no steady job, no close family, and a history of violence toward women. When investigators checked phone tower records, Tanya's and Calvin's phones pinged near the same area, a rural stretch off Highway 17, near an abandoned sawmill, around 12:28 a.m. After that, Tanya's phone went dark. Detectives and K-9 units searched the area. The sawmill was surrounded by thick woods and old machinery rusting under vines. About 100 yards from the entrance, a deputy found a tire track in the mud. Near it, broken glass from a taillight, and a small gold earring. Vanessa, her mother, later identified the earring as part of a pair Tanya always wore. 2 days later, on Tuesday morning, a hunter called 911 after spotting something near a creek about 2 miles from the sawmill. It was Tanya's red Nissan, half submerged in water. The front bumper was crushed, and both windows shattered. Inside, her phone and purse were missing. When divers searched downstream, they found a piece of cloth, her work apron, torn and tangled in debris. The community's response was immediate. Flyers filled storefronts and gas pumps. Local media ran nightly coverage. Her co-workers held a vigil outside the diner, lighting candles under the flickering neon sign. Detective Laura McKinney, who led the missing persons unit, said, "This wasn't random. Whoever did this had watched her. He knew her route, her schedule." The diner's security footage gave them everything they needed: Calvin Brooks's face, his mannerisms, and his car. When police arrived at his halfway house, his bed was empty. His roommate said he hadn't seen him since Sunday morning. On the wall above his mattress was a single photo: a waitress at a diner, smiling with a tray of coffee cups. Tanya. By Thursday, Calvin Brooks was officially listed as a fugitive. His mugshot appeared on the evening news, alongside the words "person of interest in missing waitress case." He was spotted 2 days later, at a gas station near Macon, 160 miles west. Surveillance cameras captured him buying gas and a sandwich, wearing the same denim jacket from the diner footage. His Impala had new plates, but police traced the VIN. It was a match. A bolo went out to every law enforcement agency in the region. That night, a deputy with the Bibb County Sheriff's Office spotted the car abandoned behind an old motel. Inside, police found Tanya's missing phone, smashed. In the trunk, they discovered a diner receipt with her handwriting: Table 4, coffee refill. A faint bloodstain marked the corner of the paper. DNA tests later confirmed what everyone feared. Tanya's remains were found buried in a shallow grave less than half a mile from the motel. She'd been strangled. The autopsy estimated her time of death between 12:45 and 1:10 a.m., roughly an hour after leaving the diner. The case that began with a flicker of neon lights and a waitress's uneasy glance was now a homicide. Police launched a manhunt across Georgia. Calvin Brooks was located a week later in Pensacola, Florida, hiding in a storage unit behind a laundromat. Inside the unit were stolen license plates, several diner uniforms, and a knife with traces of Tanya's DNA on it. When SWAT officers moved in, he didn't resist. He told them, "She shouldn't have looked at me like that." Those words became the opening line of the prosecution's case months later. At trial, prosecutors laid out the story piece by piece, relying heavily on CCTV, the diner footage, the parking lot camera, and the gas station tape. Together, they formed a timeline of obsession and opportunity. In closing arguments, the district attorney said, "This was not a random act. This was a man who saw kindness as weakness and opportunity as permission." Calvin Brooks was convicted of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to life without parole. After sentencing, Tanya's mother spoke to reporters outside the courthouse. "She worked hard for everything she had," she said. "She didn't deserve to die because she smiled at someone doing her job." The diner where she worked still keeps her photo near the register. A small plaque reads, "In memory of Tanya Rhodes, forever our sunshine." In the days that followed Calvin Brooks's arrest, the Savannah Police Department's evidence lab became the core of the investigation. Every item collected from his Impala, motel room, and storage unit was cataloged: fibers, dirt samples, cigarette butts, and traces of blood found in the trunk lining. Forensic technicians worked methodically. The dirt on his floor mats matched the mineral composition of soil taken from the creek bed where Tanya's car had been found. The knife discovered in his storage locker carried both his fingerprints and hers. But the strongest evidence came from the diner itself: a single coffee cup left behind at the corner booth. DNA on the rim matched Calvin's, tying him to the location within the same hour Tanya disappeared. Detective Laura McKinney called it the tightest chain of proof I've ever seen in a murder case. The timeline, reconstructed from dozens of surveillance feeds and toll cameras, showed everything. Calvin leaving the halfway house around 9:45 p.m., arriving at the diner by 10:10, and sitting for nearly an hour while watching Tanya work. When she left, he followed, at a measured distance, headlights dimmed. By the time Tanya's Nissan reached the outskirts of town, his car was still behind her. Traffic cameras clocked them both running a red light at 12:09 a.m. He trailed her until the road turned into darkness, a stretch of old industrial land near the abandoned sawmill. There were no more cameras after that point. When investigators questioned Calvin after his arrest, his story shifted repeatedly. At first, he denied knowing Tanya at all. "I never met that woman," he said flatly. Detective McKinney leaned across the table, sliding photographs toward him: the diner booth, the parking lot, the coffee cup. He stared at them for several seconds, then exhaled through his nose. "Maybe I was there," he muttered. "Maybe she looked familiar." He claimed he left the diner and went home. But when they showed him the gas station footage from Macon, recorded the same night Tanya went missing, he closed his eyes and said nothing. When asked about the knife, he replied, "That's not mine." Then, finally, after 3 hours, he said softly, "She was nice to me. I thought she wanted to talk." Detectives pieced together his past. Calvin Brooks had been released from Georgia State Prison after serving 16 years for kidnapping his ex-girlfriend in 2007. He'd abducted her from a shopping center parking lot after she tried to end the relationship. She survived, but the case left him labeled a high-risk violent offender. His parole required weekly check-ins, but he'd skipped his last 2. When the Savannah Parole Office checked his logs, they discovered he'd disabled his ankle monitor 4 days before Tanya's murder. To prosecutors, it was a pattern: obsession, control, violence. The prosecution's case was built on surveillance, more than 120 clips synchronized to the minute. In court, a digital reconstruction played across a large screen: Tanya refilling coffee, Calvin watching, Tanya leaving, Calvin following. Each timestamp rolled forward in real time, the audience silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Prosecutor Anthony Wallace narrated calmly, letting the evidence speak for itself. "This isn't a man who snapped," he told the jury. "This is a man who waited. He picked his moment, followed his target, and took her life without hesitation." The defense argued otherwise, claiming Calvin suffered from post-incarceration stress disorder. His attorney said he had difficulty reacclimating to social boundaries. But the jury saw the same footage everyone else did: deliberate movement, calculated pursuit, and premeditated disposal. Vanessa Rhodes sat through every minute of the trial. Each time the diner footage appeared, she lowered her head, gripping a tissue tightly. She said later that she didn't want to see her daughter's last shift, but she couldn't look away. Her testimony was brief but powerful. "She called me every night after work," Vanessa told the court. "Except that one. She looked directly at Calvin. You watched her smile. You waited until she was alone. Then you took her from her babies." Calvin didn't respond. He just looked down, as if studying the table. Tanya's co-workers testified next. Denise Harper, the one who had worked the shift with her, recalled the man's demeanor. "He wasn't eating. He just sat there staring," she said. "When I asked if he needed anything else, he said, 'I'm just waiting.' That's what he told me. 'I'm just waiting.'" The entire courtroom went silent. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury retired to deliberate. They returned in less than 5 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts: murder, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. When the judge asked if Calvin wished to address the court before sentencing, he stood slowly, his shackles clinking against the floor. "I didn't mean to kill her," he said. "I just wanted to talk. She made me feel invisible. I thought maybe she'd understand." The judge looked unimpressed. "Mr. Brooks, you've spent your life taking what isn't yours: people's peace, their safety, their future. This court will take your freedom in return." Calvin Brooks was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In the aftermath, Savannah mourned. Hundreds attended Tanya's funeral at First Baptist Church. Her 2 young sons sat in the front row, holding hands with their grandmother. A framed photo from the diner, Tanya smiling, wearing her uniform, rested atop the casket. The owner of the diner later replaced the booth where she had served her last customer with a small memorial plaque: "In loving memory of our friend and sister, Tanya Rhodes. Forever in our hearts." Detective McKinney said in an interview, the cameras told us what Tanya couldn't. Without that footage, we might still be searching. Every year since, the Savannah PD holds a short briefing for new recruits using her case. The lesson isn't about evidence. It's about listening to instincts. How Tanya's simple remark, "That guy gives me the creeps," was a warning that no one could have imagined would be her last. Vanessa still visits the diner once a month. She sits at the counter, drinks coffee, and talks to the staff like family. "I don't blame anyone," she said quietly one afternoon. "But I want people to remember her not as a victim, as a mom who worked hard, who smiled even when she was tired, who made everyone around her feel loved." She paused, staring at the neon sign flickering above the window. She was serving him coffee, she whispered, and he was thinking about killing her. That's the part that never stops replaying. The crime also spurred change. Within months, the diner installed new parking lot lighting, panic buttons behind the counter, and employee escort services for night staff. Across Georgia, similar establishments adopted Tanya's law, requiring 24-hour restaurants to keep exterior surveillance running and to ensure staff never close alone. It became one of the first local safety policies inspired by a homicide caught on CCTV. In prison, Calvin Brooks remains isolated due to multiple violent altercations with other inmates. According to correctional officers, he rarely speaks. During a mandatory psychological evaluation, he told a counselor, "She smiled at me like she pitied me. I couldn't stand that." Those words were later released in a parole hearing transcript, further proving what prosecutors had argued all along. This wasn't about love, rejection, or misunderstanding. It was about power. Detective McKinney reflected on the case years later. "Some cases haunt you because of what you see on the footage," she said. "Others because of what you don't. The parts that happen between frames. The seconds before someone disappears from the camera's view. That's where evil hides." Today, the footage of Tanya Rhodes's final shift is archived in the Savannah Police Department's digital vault, used for training purposes. It's shown in silence. No narration, no captions. A waitress refills a coffee cup. A man stares at her. A clock on the wall reads 11:32 p.m. She smiles one last time. Then the camera blinks, and she's gone. The story of Tanya Rhodes became a sobering reminder of how ordinary moments can mask extraordinary danger. Her coworkers still talk about her laugh. Her children, now teenagers, say they remember the smell of her perfume when she hugged them goodbye before every shift. And her mother, she still sets a place for her every Christmas.